My one policy question is just on, can you give us any kind of an update on Jeff Feltman's meetings in Addis today?
Happy to do that. So before we get into what Ambassador Feltman has been doing in Addis today, let me just start by noting that today is a somber anniversary. It is the 1-year anniversary of the beginning of the fighting and the conflict in northern Ethiopia. And as that fighting, as that conflict has escalated, as it has spread from Tigray in recent weeks, we remained gravely concerned by the expanding conflict, by the violence, the expansion of the fighting throughout the country, and the growing risks that it poses to the unity, to the integrity of the Ethiopian state. Consistent with that, the safety, the security of U.S. citizens, U.S. government personnel, their dependents, and also the security of our facilities is among our highest priorities. And that's why, among other steps, we call on the TPLF, we call upon the Oromo Liberation Army, the OLA, to halt their advance towards Addis, and we call on all parties to engage in dialogue on a cessation of hostilities. We note the nationwide state of emergency that was declared by the Ethiopian Council of Ministers, and we urge all parties to use restraint, to end hostilities, and to ensure civilians' rights are respected. As you know, Ambassador Feltman traveled to Ethiopia yesterday. He has been engaged in meetings with Ethiopian officials today. Today, he met with the African Union Commission Chairperson Moussa Faki. He met with the Minister of Defense, Abraham Bale. He met with Minister of Finance, Ahmed Shide. And he met with Deputy Prime Minister Demike Mekonnen Hassan. There will be, I would expect, a readout after his visit. As you know, he's there both today, he'll be there tomorrow, where he will continue to engage. And he is there to do what we have set out to do for some time now, and that is to find an acceptable path to resolving the expanding conflict in Ethiopia. And to that end, that is why we have reiterated our calls for all parties to end hostilities immediately. That includes the TPLF, that includes the Ethiopian government. We call on them to enter negotiations without preconditions towards a sustainable ceasefire. We again call for Eritrean forces to withdraw immediately and permanently from Ethiopia. And we again call for all those who are responsible for the human rights abuses and violations to be held accountable. Let me make one other point. As you know, yesterday we spoke to the Level 4 travel advisory that we have issued for Ethiopia, given the tenuous security situation and the advances towards the capital. We again urge all private American citizens to take advantage of the commercial air options that continue to be available in and out of the capital city, Addis Ababa, to leave. We are encouraging them to do that very strongly. We have no higher priority than the safety and security of American citizens, and of course that includes private American citizens, and that is why we are speaking as starkly as we can, urging them to leave the country, given that there are commercial options available. Go ahead.
No, okay. I just want to, so you don't expect anything substantive out of his talks until he finishes them tomorrow?
Well, no. What I said is that we'll have a readout when he.
I know, but tomorrow or
tomorrow. He's going to continue to have discussions tomorrow, so we'll provide additional details we can tomorrow. Yes. We don't have any follow-on travel to announce at this time. As I said, he had a productive set of discussions with Ethiopian interlocutors today. He appreciated the opportunity to do so. He'll have an opportunity to continue discussions tomorrow. We'll update you should his travel plans change. Jenny? He will meet with, we expect he will meet with additional interlocutors from the government of Ethiopia, but nothing further to preview at this time.
Does this building have any comment on the joint investigation that came out yesterday on the atrocities that were committed?
So yesterday, the Office of the UN Commissioner for Human Rights and the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, they jointly released a report detailing human rights abuses and violations in Tigray. We are reviewing this report. We do welcome its release, and we welcome its release in part because, as I said before, we are determined to see to it that those responsible for committing these human rights abuses, these violations, are held to account. And in this case, we commend the two offices that produced this report for fulfilling their mandates and for releasing their joint report. We believe that it sets a standard for similar reporting done in other parts of the world. We are carefully reviewing the report. We appreciate the fact that it sets forth a sobering account of extensive, of serious human rights abuses and violations committed by all parties to the conflict. We, as I said before, for a year now, we have expressed grave concerns over the horrific violence committed against civilians during the conflict in northern Ethiopia by all parties, and that includes egregious acts such as killings, sexual and gender-based violence, abductions, and other human rights abuses. The joint report outlines a number of recommendations, including for the parties to end violations and abuses of human rights, into, as we have called for, to end hostilities without preconditions to enable a space for peaceful resolution. For its part, the government of Ethiopia is specifically urged to work towards a transparent, holistic, and victim-centered transitional justice process, including those holding those responsible for abuses and human rights abuses and violations. Similarly, we also expect that the TPLF and allied parties commit to ending the horrific human rights abuses perpetrated against Ethiopian civilians as well as Eritrean refugees. We continue, as I said before, to call for an immediate cessation of combat operations and any further military advances to be brought to a halt as a negotiated ceasefire begins. Sean.
Can I go next door to Sudan?
Sure.
General Burhan just announced today the release of 4 ministers who had been detained, and is talking about the formation soon of another government of some form. How do you see these moves? Are these positive signs at all? How do you sense where things are going right now in Sudan?
Well, since this military takeover, we have made very clear that we stand with the people of Sudan, who themselves have stood in the streets, have taken to the streets peacefully to make very clear that their aspirations for democracy remain, and they remain strong. We join the Sudanese people in calling for justice and accountability for the abuses of human rights. And we urge the military to end the internet shutdown and the state of emergency, and to your question, Sean, to release all civilian leaders and protest organizers detained since the takeover. So we have taken note of some of these actions, but again, we, and importantly, the international community, and yesterday we spoke to a joint statement that we issued with our British partners, with our Emirati partners, with our Saudi partners, and much of the international community has issued a similar message, calling for restoration of the civilian-led democratic government and calling for a release of all of those detained since October 26th, when the military takeover occurred.
Just to follow up quickly, I mean, do you find that it's going in a slightly positive direction with these moves that we see here today, or is it premature?
I wouldn't want to characterize it piecemeal. What we would like to do is to be able to characterize the restoration of the democratic transitional government when that takes place. And we are working with our partners around the clock. Secretary Blinken is engaged, Deputy Secretary Sherman is engaged, Ambassador Feltman is engaged, Ambassador Fee is engaged, as well as many others in this building towards that end. So when that takes place, that is when we'll be able to offer a broader characterization.